Let's assume over the next couple days that Linus Ullmark is traded to the Ottawa Senators and the Boston Bruins get their first-round draft pick back. What can they realistically expect to be available at 25th overall next Friday?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, June 21st, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your own hockey franchise? Well, now you can with Ultimate Hockey GM. Completely free, and Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On NHL in the game store. Download the game by visiting hockeygm.app or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Bruins fan. Been hosting this podcast for 5 years. Prior to that, I was a full-time hockey news writer for The Score for about 5 years. Been covering this team for various outlets for 20 years, beginning with the Joe Thornton trade. And speaking of Jumbo, it's the anniversary of him going first overall in the NHL draft, 1997. Teenage Ian was delighted that the Bruins, not that they were that bad, that they had the first overall pick, but they were able to get a franchise-type player in Joe Thornton. We're not going to go over the whole history there, but on that day, plus the addition of Sergei Samsonov, it was pretty cool. Speaking of the NHL draft, it's set for 1 week from today in Vegas, and it's pretty crazy considering the Stanley Cup has not yet been decided. Game 6 between the Edmonton Oilers and Florida Panthers goes tonight. My hope is that it goes to a Game 7 because I am rooting for the Oilers. In that case, it would end on Monday. We'll talk about the implications of 2023-24 season ending here and what it means for the beginning of the offseason coming up later in the podcast. But the NHL draft set for June 28th and 29th in Vegas. As it stands, our Boston Bruins will be inactive at the draft until the 4th round, so well into Saturday. That's because their first round pick was traded to the Detroit Red Wings last season as part of the Tyler Bertuzzi deal. It was top 10 protected. That those conditions were not met because the Bruins were pretty good this season. It's the 25th overall pick, and it currently belongs to the Ottawa Senators because they acquired that pick in a deal last offseason involving the rights to Alex DeBrincat. His signing rights were traded from Ottawa to Detroit in exchange for Dominic Kubalik, Donovan Sabrango, and the 2024 first-round pick that belonged to the Boston Bruins that was conditional. There was also a 4th-round pick in there as well. Again, the conditions were that Boston, if they finished in the bottom 10, you got a top 10 pick, it would go to next season, but they finished in the top 10. So it's a bottom 10 pick, and they got to keep it, but it was now belonging to Ottawa. What that sets up is a potential deal over the weekend. Maybe today they want to bury it in the Celtics parade, or prior to the draft involving Linus Ullmark. It's a much reported on trade possibility that the Bruins could send Ullmark to the Ottawa Senators in a package that would include their own first-round pick. The Senators have a couple first-round picks. Highly unlikely that they'd be willing to part with their 7th overall pick, but the 25th overall pick could very well be in play, and the Bruins could get a pretty decent player, a pretty decent prospect at that position. Just as a way of reminder, their 2nd-round pick belongs now to the Anaheim Ducks. That was part of the Hampus Lindholm trade. Their 3rd-round pick currently belongs to the Washington Capitals as part of the Garnet Hathaway Dmitry Orlov trade. So at the moment, no pick until the 4th round here in the 2024 NHL entry draft. They do have their 2025 first-round pick, but their 2nd-round pick next year also gone as part of that trade with the Washington Capitals. The Capitals own that pick as well. So that's where things stand at the moment. Now, if the Bruins are able to get into the first round, even if that's at 25, they could still get a pretty good player. And of course, we all know the biggest area of need for the Bruins is down the middle. There was an Athletic article this morning ranking center depth around the NHL. I believe it was Sean Gentili who wrote that article, and he had the Bruins at 28th overall. I was looking at some rankings around the draft for next week, and there's a couple of players that stand out as being available around 25. That's pretty consensus that they will be around there. And first is Sasha Boisvert from Muskegon of the USHL. Stephen Ellis of Daily Faceoff writes, Boisvert is relied upon to do a bit of everything in Muskegon. It's impressive that he managed to put up 36 goals and 68 points in 61 games while still being, this is key here, Bruins fans should recognize this language, the team's best two-way forward with great defensive awareness. If that's not a Bruins type player, I don't know what is. He has good skill, competitiveness, reads plays as well as any center in the draft. Might not be a high-end scorer in the NHL, but 50 points would be an attainable goal. Rachel Dory on ESPN had Boisvert also at 25 overall. Statistical profile is an impressive one with relatively confident projection as a middle six center in the NHL. A blend of individual skill, a quick release, and competitive two-way play. Rachel continues, once he fills out his 6'2 frame with muscle, he'll be more difficult to deal with on both sides of the puck. His skating is average, and he should improve with added strength and a more powerful stride base. Understands how to play at different paces and in tight areas, which will only develop further and open more opportunities to use his NHL-ready release. He'll need a few years to mature physically, but the tools are there to be an effective contributor in the middle of an NHL lineup. Kind of right in the wheelhouse of what the Bruins are currently getting from a guy like Charlie Coyle. Finally, we have Matt Larkin, I believe. Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News at 25. He also has a guy named Julius Mitianin. And we'll discuss him more coming up as the podcast continues. Now, there's a lot of Bruins fans out there who think they could do a better job at running an NHL club than general manager Don Sweeney. Well, now you have your chance. Ultimate Hockey GM is most definitely for you. You can manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead it to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, trade players or draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Bruins fan, you know there's no offseason. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you're going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go. as you want and when you want. Locked On NHL Network listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. Make sure to check it out. Download the game by visiting hockeygm.app or look it up on the App Store at Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today, while you're on YouTube, make sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today channel. All the latest news, opinions, analysis from around the Locked On universe, coverage of the Celtics parade, coverage of Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight, available on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, before the break, I mentioned Julius Miettinen, who was ranked 25th by Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News in his final rankings. Stephen Ellis of Daily Faceoff has him at 49th, writing, quote, the Everett Silvertips of the WHL star plugged away at a point-per-game pace all season long, his first in North America. He's big at 6'3", 207 pounds, not afraid to use his frame anytime he can. He protects well, skates solidly, and is difficult to take the puck off of. Season started slowly, but once he got more comfortable in his new environment, he started to look really good. Could be an option down the middle for the Bruins, but maybe a reach at 25, which, hey, Don Sweeney's no stranger to reaches. A guy that I am really interested in, and longtime listeners of the podcast will know why, is a guy named Jet Luchenko, and he is a center for the Guelph Storm up here in the OHL. Teammates with Matt Poitras during his last year in Guelph, which was 2 seasons ago, seeing as he made the jump to the Boston Bruins this past season. Actually, was he? Yeah, he was on the roster then. And he has developed into a very solid playmaker for the Guelph Storm. There is some concern about his size. He's 5'11", 170 pounds. He needs to add some more muscle, as does Poitras. But he put up more than 50 assists this past year, has impressive vision and hockey IQ. Luchenko excels in creating opportunities on the power play, primarily as a playmaker. He also has great at shot, although he maybe needs to use it a bit more often. Kind of a borderline first-round pick, but the talent is there, and he has a very solid hockey IQ. And how cool would it be? Selfishly, I would love this for Luchenko Poitras to be reunited in the Bruins system. Luchenko skated in 68 games for the Guelph Storm this past season. He led the club in scoring at 74 points, 20 goals, 54 assists, and pretty impressive as a 17-year-old. He'll turn 18 on August 21st. Now, Rachel Dory, I mentioned her rankings. She had Luchenko at 26th. Ryan Ellis had him down at 36th. And Rachel wrote, Luchenko's production exploded this season with an elevated role in Guelph. I would add that role was elevated because of Poitras' absence, and he has shown positive development over the course of the season. His above-average skating and puck skill with the instincts in all 3 zones to match. Her model is confident that Luchenko will be an NHL player, albeit maybe a bottom 6 forward type. Given the versatility of his toolbox, his competitiveness on the puck, excellent instincts in skating, and being one of the youngest players in the draft, Luchenko's development runway is longer than others, but he should be a dependable NHL player, end quote. So let's say Matt Poitras projects as a number 2 center at the NHL level, add Luchenko, or Boisvert, who I mentioned earlier. Those guys could be penciled in as your future third line center with, of course, the need to add a number one center somehow, whether it be in free agency or via trade. I don't know if Elias Lindholm is that guy, or if they wait for next year and try to convince Leon Draisaitl to come in. I don't know if they're going to get a number one center at the 25th overall pick. If they somehow were able to grab the 7th overall pick, obviously that would change the conversation. You would get players available like Caden Lindstrom from Medicine Hat, perhaps who else might be available? Konsta Helenius out of Finland. Tijiginla would be an amazing ad, but I don't think they'll be able to get. He would be the guy that I would want to grab for sure, but he's more of a winger and could be available at 7, but not likely going to be there at 25th. In fact, he will not at all. So they're probably not going to get a top center in the draft. They would have to get up to 7th and get like Berkeley Catton or who else is available? Caden Lindstrom. That's probably not going to happen. They could possibly be able to draft a future middle 6 center in either Luchenko or Boisvert. That's probably what they're looking at when it comes to grabbing the 25th overall pick, if indeed that does happen over the weekend. We'll keep an eye on that. And if there is a Linus Ullmark trade, I'll be honest, I'm going to be hanging with family on Saturday down at Lake Ontario. But if a trade does break, I'll be sure to jump on and at least do a quick YouTube short. So be sure to have subscribed down there. If they do get that pick, we'll explore other options later on in terms of perhaps some wingers or defensemen. But for the moment, those are the 2 players that I would key in on. Sasha Boisvert and Jet Luchenko are the guys that I would want at number 25 if the Boston Bruins are indeed able to grab that. Now, the season could be over tonight, as I mentioned earlier. That would kickstart the official NHL offseason, and we'll discuss what that exactly means in terms of timelines here as the podcast continues. All right, so my van's air conditioner is pooched, and I was spending a lot of time the other day on eBay Motors checking out compressors because that's what it needs to be replaced. And I was astounded by how much selection they had over there. Everything your vehicle needs is available at eBay Motors, whether you're looking for superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. eBay Motors has you covered. There's over 122 million parts for your ride, and you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. Turn your vehicle into an MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply, and the eBay Guaranteed Fit is available only to U.S. customers. Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final goes tonight, and if the Florida Panthers are able to defeat the Edmonton Oilers, knock on wood, I hope they do not. I would love to see the Oilers come back. Connor McDavid, just an all-time performance, and he deserves to raise that cup. If it ends tonight, though, 48 hours after the Stanley Cup Final is when the NHL's buyout window opens. That's the first big thing before the NHL draft, which again is going to happen happening 1 week from today in Vegas. So teams will have an opportunity to exercise buyouts, and on The Athletic the other day, they mentioned several candidates who could be bought out. If you remember last year, the list included Well, Boston's own Mike Riley was bought out. He's on the books for one more year at a $1.33 million cap hit. The Jets bought out Blake Wheeler. Predators bought out Matt Duchene. Oliver Ekman-Larsson was bought out as well. And there is a former Bruin who is a possible buyout candidate in Torrey Krug over in Seattle. Other players, well, Barclay Goodrow was on this list. He was already waived and picked up by the the San Jose Sharks. Joonas Korpisalo is a buyout candidate. If the Senators are able to acquire Linus Ullmark, he certainly would be expendable. Jack Campbell could be bought out. That could be a buy low candidate for the Bruins as a backup to Jeremy Swayman. Who knows? Connor Sheary in Tampa. They need to free up some money in order to sign Steven Stamkos. We've talked about the possibility of the Bruins chasing him if he becomes available. Cam Atkinson is a candidate in Philadelphia, as is goaltender Cal Peterson. Pierre-Luc Dubois was a candidate prior to being traded to Washington. That buyout would have been on the books for another 15 years, to 2037, 38, if you can believe it. Who else? Philip Grubauer in Seattle. Korpisalo, I mentioned. Jacob Trouba, the captain of the New York Rangers. That would be an interesting one for sure. There are others, Nate Schmidt, Jean-Gabriel Pageau. For the Bruins, no real question about whether or not they are going to buy out anybody this year. Highly unlikely. The candidates that they perhaps would have considered are free agents and free to walk, like your Derek Forborts, maybe Matt Grzelcyk. Nobody really a candidate to be bought out at this point for the Boston Bruins. So that's something to keep an eye of. That could kick in either Sunday night if the Panthers win tonight, or Wednesday night if the Oilers push it to a Game 7, with the NHL draft set to begin next Friday. So 48 hours after that. It's going to be a very busy hockey week next week. You're going to want to stay on top of all the latest by subscribing to Locked On Boston Bruins. Any trades, any announcements made by Don Sweeney, I will be sure to be all over it. He has scheduled some availabilities around the draft. Let me just pull that up here. Don Sweeney will be speaking at 12 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday, June 27th from Vegas. After that, some Bruins front office representatives will be available to the media following the conclusion of round 1 of the NHL draft. And that begins at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And then Bruins front office representatives, selected drafted players will be available following the conclusion of the draft, which will resume at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday. So we can expect to hear from Don Sweeney on Thursday. We'll bring you all the latest on what we learned, and if he has any comments about picking up a first-round pick. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me here on Locked On Boston Bruins. Hope you all are having a great week. Please do enjoy the weekend responsibly. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And shout out to everybody out there enjoying the Celtics parade right now. Hopefully, one day soon, we'll be doing that again for our Boston Bruins. All right, take care, friends. Talk to you again next time here on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.